So I guess I always kickstart my episodes with why you became a pharmacist in the first place. So tell us little bit about your journey from the beginning.
Yeah, so probably the reason why I became a pharmacist was I was sort of, at that crossroad. I think generally, I think we all feel when you're sort of at the age of 13, 14, 15, you're sort of going through GCSEs, you're sort of thinking about your A levels and thinking about every decision you're probably going to make is going to shape where you're likely to end up, or at least go to university, or what type of degree you're going to study. And I was really unsure of it at GCSEs. I wasn't the uh, most obedient student, I must admit, at secondary school. I went through a few up and downs, and my mum would probably vouch for that as well. Managed to get to GCSEs, and then at A levels, I really was the sort of kick in the arse that I probably needed to really start to focus and think about career, think about working harder, think about really putting effort in. And there was probably a moment where I have uncles and aunties that are doctors, dentists, and optoms as well. And I was thinking to myself, well, what else could there potentially be? And thinking about science is definitely an area I'm interested in. I loved chemistry, loved biology. And I was thinking to myself, well, what else is there out there? I had an uncle that was a pharmacist as well, and I said I needed some work experience, like you always do, to help with your personal statements for UCAS applications. And I decided to experience what doctor would look like in a hospital, what a dentist would be, pharmacist. The pharmacy thing just stuck to me. I worked in a community pharmacy with him, and I saw how I think he was a really good pharmacist, and how he was doing things for people in the community, the services he was running, the repertoire he had with patients, and that personalisation, the fact that people could just walk in to a community pharmacy without the need for an appointment, get that specialist sort of healthcare advice. And it was really it was a fun day. And I still remember it to this day, working in that pharmacy for that week. And it just sort of inspired me, saying this is something I could really enjoy doing, and really, really think something I could take forward as well. And also the fact is that at that time, pharmacy was paying pretty well. And actually just thinking about different motives and different agendas, saying, look, this is a great job, real flexible working. He was a locum, enjoying what that fluidity of the job was. And so that was really part of the driver. But for me, the essence was getting to understand medicines on a much more personal level, and understanding how they work within the human body, but then how you apply that into real life practice to patients, and advice and counselling and supporting people around their medicines, which was the real game changer in my head around this is fantastic and this is something I want to pursue.
The reason I became a pharmacist was because I loved healthcare, and I was a lifeguard, and I was doing all the things health, and even volunteering in the ER. But I didn't consider pharmacy at first because my brother was a pharmacist. So I didn't want to be a copycat. And back in the 80s, so, it's 25 years ago, 30 years ago now with my journey. Back in the 80s, there was a TV show on called LA Law. So I wanted to be a lawyer, like all the cool people on LA Law. And I didn't, I just started off in the law school space and the pre-law space, and really just realized my passion was in healthcare. I wanted to heal people. And so I did end up I got a bachelor's degree with political science and then international communications, double major rather. And then I went to pharmacy school. It just felt like that hole still needed to be filled. So I did. And then when I was in pharmacy school, my mom died of cancer. So it really became very clear to me that I made the right choice. And I really wanted to go straight out of pharmacy school, even though I did hospital and community. And I wanted to go straight out of pharmacy school and do something very different. I wanted to go into research, and specifically oncology research. And I did that.
I'll start, with my background. First of all, I'll have to say that I have spent over 20 years of my life in Australia, but I was not able to shake my American accent. But I do consider myself a true blue Aussie, having lived more than half my life in Australia. So I grew up in Los Angeles, California, but moved to Australia when I was about 14 years of age, and lived there for the next 20 odd years. I received my pharmacy degree from the University of Queensland way back in 1998, which seems like a long time ago, and practiced pharmacy in Australia, mostly, if not all, community pharmacy. I remember coming out of university, I tried to get a hospital pharmacy internship, because that seemed to be the gold standard, and all the all the interns wanted to be in hospital. It just seemed a little bit more clinical, a little bit more just doing what you were trained to do. But I couldn't get a job in hospital pharmacy, and I ended up in community pharmacy. And funny enough, it was exactly the right place for me to be, because I loved the interaction. I loved patients, seeing the same patients over and over again. And I really, really enjoyed it for many years. And I ended up buying into my first pharmacy in 2005, which was a small Amcal brand in Australia, in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, which I did for a few years, and which was I don't know if total disaster is the word, but it was not successful. I'm happy to dive into that if you want to reopen old wounds. But it was definitely a learning experience, and I exited that business a few years later, before re-entering ownership in 2012, where I was one of the founding members of a pharmacy group that had a number of pharmacies in Sydney, Brisbane, and Adelaide, and I ended up co-owning 4 pharmacies myself. Terry White, which is now Terry White Chemmart in Australia, and Priceline Brands. And I did that for a number of years. At the same time, I went to grad school. I achieved my Master's of Management, my MBA from Macquarie University. And by 2014-ish, I sort of had enough of community pharmacy and decided I wanted to try something else. And ultimately, I left the country, moving back to the States at that time. I worked as a management consultant in the dental industry, of all things, when I first came back to the States, before joining CVS Health, which is the largest retail pharmacy chain in the country, doing product development for their retail pharmacy network. I then shifted to health insurance, to Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the largest health insurance network in the US, doing product development again, particularly in digital and telehealth-based products. And eventually I moved to my current role, which is fully into digital health and the startup arena, when I joined Omada Health, where I'm currently a regional vice president of health plan sales. So that's kind of my journey, my occupational journey. A little over 4 years ago, I co-founded a communication startup called Audrey with a good friend of mine, Peter Cladius, who's an actual Aussie with an Aussie accent, based in Sydney. And I'm currently a co-CEO with Peter of that enterprise as well.
So initially, when I was in high school, I love chemistry, so I wanted to study chemistry initially. But I knew I didn't want to go only studying chemistry, and not sure if I would end up as a chemist, as a researcher, or if I couldn't go through this path, most of the time you would end up as a chemistry teacher. So I wanted to make sure I have more options. So I like the health aspect. So I considered studying medicine and pharmacy. And because there were more chemistry in pharmacy, I chose pharmacy.
Amazing. And what was university like for you? Did you continue your journey with enjoying, I guess, the chemistry kind of modules that you were involved in the first couple of years? And I assume you loved pharmaceutics as well, and kind of any of the sort of sciencey and, industry related kind of subjects that you go through as a student.
Yes. So during my pharmacy school in France, I tried to specialize more in industry and research. So I did some internship and like extracurricular activities linked to chemistry or medicinal chemistry, organic chemistry research. I did an internship placement during my second and third year in a medicinal chemistry lab. And then I realized actually I don't like the lab aspect of medicinal chemistry. So I tried to shift my focus to different fields. So I was more interested in pharmaceutics, drug delivery. That's why I did my master in drug delivery and pharmaceutics.
And what is it about, I guess, drug development and pharmaceutics that you're quite passionate about? What was it at university that really kind of gave you that drive to consider a career pathway down this route?
So first, I had very good, enthusiastic and entertaining professor. Professor Jürgen Zietman is German initially, and is quite known in the pharmaceutic drug delivery field. And it's always very entertaining and interesting lectures. And so that's why I was very interested in this topic. And I like the formulation drug delivery aspect because we are able to, using drug powder and different excipients, powder or different excipients, we can formulate a drug and then bring it to the market, or at least in clinical trials, and hopefully bring it to the market.
So pharmacy, I'm not really sure if I'm honest. I think it was a case of I wanted to do something sciencey. I enjoyed maths, I enjoyed chemistry, and it was a vocational job that gave a lot of opportunity for going straight into a role and practicing and seeing patients. And, as I started the journey in pharmacy career, I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually quite difficult. Didn't find all of it easy. I never did biology A level. So I went into the degree going, oh gosh, I'm quite behind. Had to take some remedial classes, remember them fondly. But as time went on, I enjoyed the degree and then came out and did my pre-reg. And I guess things just went from there.
Amazing. And during the university degree, what were your thought processes on what your career would look like, and where you wanted to kind of start your journey as a pharmacist?
So definitely, and this is no disrespect to anybody who works in community pharmacy, I certainly wanted to have a bustling role in a hospital pharmacy. I really enjoy sort of meeting and working with multidisciplinary team and being able to go on ward rounds and sort of showcase your knowledge, experience, and what you bring to the team when you're seeing patients. And actually, for me, it was always pediatrics. I always knew that that's the area I loved. When I was an undergrad student, I went to Michigan for an exchange placement, and I spent quite a lot of my time shadowing some of the pediatric teams over there, and I absolutely loved it. And I just knew from then that I wanted something to do with pediatrics, but at that point was nowhere near sure if it was going to be cancer or gastro or general pediatrics, but certainly knew it was hospital pharmacy and something with pediatrics involved.
So what's the story to that one? The story started, I went to college thinking I wanted either business or medicine. I really didn't quite know. I have no pharmacy family in history in my background, nor medical relatives essentially. And when I went to the University of Michigan, I had eyes wide open and quickly learned that business wasn't the way to go. So I was thinking about medicine and did all the pre-med courses and was working my way through some of that, and wasn't quite sure that medicine was the route for me either. I was thinking of the long haul of the education and the rigors of training, and part of it had to do with the messiness of health and how much patient involvement I wanted. And I really had no idea about the Doctor of Pharmacy degree. So I was at the university and there was a College of Pharmacy there, and I explored. So I found out what this PharmD degree was. I met with some phenomenal professors at the College of Pharmacy there and realized it was a way to be in healthcare, to be in medicine, but in a cleaner way of sorts, not having to get so much into the down and dirty of patient interaction, if you will. I don't know. I'm thinking about the blood and the surgery and different aspects of medicine, if you will. But I wanted healthcare very much. And when I learned it was a way to touch patients and help the clinical side of pharmacy, I really, really liked that.
Why do you think that pharmacy kind of didn't come to the forefront of your mind when you were searching? Like, because you obviously identified medicine. Do you know?
Right. I love the question. Probably because, as most of us would experience, or again, this is in the 80s. I graduated high school in 1983. So pharmacy wasn't a glorious profession. I didn't know pharmacists except for the local pharmacist in my small town. And it was therefore medicine, the medical shows, right? The TV shows. I'm trying to think of the shows at the time where there was those cool doctors. And so you saw that piece of it. So it was probably just an awareness. And that's why I think part of my I don't know, modus operandi when I talk to people, I recognize people don't appreciate all that pharmacists know and what we can do. So maybe that's all part of it.
I had a little bit of an unusual route to pharmacy that was not my intention when I was an undergrad. So my degrees in undergrad are actually in biology and criminal justice, and I wanted to do forensic pathology or something, forensic science related. And so after I finished my undergraduate degree, in the time that I was trying to figure out if I was going to get a master's or what I was going to do, I started working at a local pharmacy just to have a job and really loved it. I loved the connections with the patients. I loved seeing how they had built relationships with the pharmacists there and getting to see them, week after week. And I really loved the environment. I loved being able to use my biology degree. I'd always been interested in medications, but the longer that I worked there, the more I decided that was where I wanted to build my career. And so I became a certified pharmacy technician and started applying to pharmacy school and got into pharmacy school, and the rest is history.
Amazing. So what was, I guess, your pharmacy school journey like?
Yeah. So after undergrad, I had a 4-year break actually before I started pharmacy school. My pharmacy school program was 4 years. And was pretty much a normal pharmacy school journey up until about 3 months before graduation. And that is when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I finished up pharmacy school and graduation and took the licensing exams while I was undergoing chemotherapy and later after graduation, surgery and radiation. And so, really, the first year after pharmacy school was spent dealing with the beginning of my cancer journey. So, during pharmacy school, I was also really involved in extracurricular organizations, both national and international. So I was involved with APHA ASP. I was heavily involved with IPSF. And then that sort of led me to some of the organizations that I'm involved in now that we'll talk about later.
That is actually a hard question because I have not really hard, but I have been all the way really passionate about healthcare since my childhood times, and even the times that are the younger generation, like my friends at the time, children, they were playing all the way with like family games and similar things, or playing with their Barbies. And I was most of the time pretending to be a doctor and a pharmacist, just taking care of the health of my family and prescribing the medicines and then like delivering the prescription. And since then, automatically, I don't know why, maybe at the time of my childhood, there has been something that has really affected me that I cannot recall of right now. But since the very early times in my toddler time, even, I was really interested in healthcare. And at some point, I have thought of having a career in art because I'm also really passionate about art. But then I stick with the original passion of me that was inside of me since my very early ages. And I decided to study medicine at first. My family was really encouraging me about pharmacy profession because that I will be having a brighter future in Cyprus with the rather than medicine and in pharmacy due to the career opportunities and job opportunities in the island. And that I decided that, okay, I am really into pharmacy as well. So why not? Then I give it a go in pharmacy. And after I started pharmacy school, I definitely said that it was the best thing, the decision that I have ever made. That pharmacy as a whole, not just a profession, but the way how we are involved in all settings, from the creation of the medicine, the design of the medicine active ingredient, and being at first place that the patients come for consultation as the primary health and the most accessible healthcare professionals. It is really
Like, I'm really enthusiastic about it. So this is why I am really happy to be a pharmacist and that I have chosen pharmacy as my profession.
Actually never thought why I'm not being a pharmacist. Because my dad used to be a surgeon, and now he's retired as a Chinese medicine doctor. My mom's a nurse. So I grew up in AAE department in the theaters thinking, like, growing up, I need to do something health related. And my dad said to me, like, don't be a doctor, because female in the doctor's world is not a fair game. It's a lot of hard work. I want to have a nice life. And my mom said, don't even think to become a nurse. You'll kill someone before you can even say the word nursing. So I was like, okay, fine. So I've become a pharmacist.
Safety officer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, it's not a bad choice. And if I would do it all over again, I would still choose pharmacy.
How many years have you been qualified now?
Oh, do I have to say it?
Yeah, go on.
I don't even know. I qualified in 2005.
Oh, okay. So around nearly 20.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
That's old.
No, that's not old. That's exciting and inspiring.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what university was like for you and where you kind of envisioned what type of pharmacist you were going to be.
I studied in Nottingham. And I know...
Same as Steve?
Yes, Nottingham Rules. And I always been a hospital pharmacist. I never considered any other career pathways. It's just very clear in my head. I just want to be a hospital pharmacist to do some clinical work. And yeah.
Did you do any placements during your undergraduate degree that helped you to realise that pathway? How did you know?
Yeah, I did some placement with Lloyd's in my second year. And obviously did my pre-reg. I did 4 weeks in the community placement as well. I love it. It's a really nice community. People coming for chats. We have like older people coming in every day just for a chat because they're so lonely. I just want someone to chat. It's a really lovely and supportive environment. But I still find hospital a bit to my taste. I've got my vision already set for hospital, like that said, ever since I studied pharmacy. So yeah, it's become just an easy choice for me.
Wow. So I am a boat person by culture. So I came over in the 1980s as a Vietnamese boat person when I was about 3. And when I came over, we grew up with on council estates, and we actually did, it was on benefits for a very, very long time as with my family because my parents weren't educated. And I basically had an epiphany when I was about 10 that said I wanted a better life for myself and I didn't want to be on benefits. And basically from there, I had a teacher who was very good and helped support me to sit my 11 plus, went to a grammar school, local grammar school with a scholarship because they're unheard of anymore. And basically, when I was looking at careers, I wanted something that could give back to the community and give back to the country, really, because I came over. And what I thought was really important was I wanted a job that allowed me flexibility because culturally, from a South Asian background, Chinese background, it's very much family orientated. I knew like my family, my parents who don't speak English would need me at some point, and I would need to work or would be able to then choose a career that could give me part-time working as well as full-time working and flexibility around that. So pharmacy suited me quite well, whilst medicine, nursing gives you a much bigger commitment with shift working and the difficulties of that.
That's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that story. And to have an epiphany at the age of 10.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a 5-year-old and she is in her own little planet of princesses and parties. So I can't imagine even a few years from now that she really truly understands what it is she wants to do in the future.
It was a very strange, it was literally, I went to a parents' evening with my parents to translate for them. I think it was my brother's, and I'd only just left the primary school at the time. I started in secondary school. I was there, I'd been at the local secondary school for a couple of weeks and went to it and just burst out into tears to the teacher and just said, I know I can do better than this, but I don't know how. It was so strange, but I can't explain it.
Well, that's quite amazing that the school took the
Yeah.
opportunity to support you and help you to grow, knowing that you wanted to do something more. And that's quite amazing. I'm not sure that all the schools in England at the moment would be, able to support children from an individual point of view. So that's great.
And especially because I wasn't their pupil anymore. So we probably don't get that sort of opportunities now that I did then. And very lucky that obviously the teachers saw that potential in me anyway.
Oh, amazing. I love that. What was pharmacy school like for you? What was it like as an undergraduate student?
Pharmacy school was very traditional because I went to Manchester University, and that's one of the Russell Square sort of classic 12 schools that you would go to. Very traditional course with pharmacognosy, with pharmaceutics and everything you would expect from it. But it felt a bit like we were the understudies to medicine, because medical school had lots of equipment, whilst our pharmacy school is very run down and very old. And actually, after we left, the school has been renovated anyway, and there's been a lot more investment into pharmacy from that perspective, because the career that I chose, and when I went into pharmacy, I was actually the year just before the fallow year when they switched from the 3-year course to the 4-year course. So employment for pharmacy was 100%. Regardless, as long as you weren't absolutely, as long as you passed your course and did your pre-reg, you'd be guaranteed a job, which was amazing. Met loads of different people in pharmacy and loads of different people and what they wanted to do. And bearing in mind, when we did the course, there wasn't extended role for pharmacists at the time. Clinical pharmacy from a ward perspective was sort of it was hospital pharmacy, that's clinical pharmacy, and it had only just really started off for the past few years. So what we are now from a clinical pharmacy perspective, and even community pharmacy services, have grown massively in comparison to what was on offer at the time. Very traditionally, pharmacy in the community was to do with supply, and responding to symptoms was the best that they had.
It wasn't planned. It happened. I was a little bit disorganized when I was doing my A-levels, and I was not sure what I wanted to do afterwards. And my father I knew I wanted to be in a lab, and I knew I wanted to do a sciencey topic. And I knew I wanted to do something healthcare related. And at the time, my father suggested pharmacy, and that's what I applied for and got it.
I was in a similar situation. I think there's quite a few of us actually who've kind of fallen in the path. Even Steve mentioned that he kind of fell into pharmacy when he was an A-level student. It just married up with a lot of the things that he liked, and he thought, well, why not? My parents they're not pharmacists, but they owned a community pharmacy for 25 years. So my dad was like, it's a brilliant profession for women. You can enjoy motherhood when you get married. You can locum, you can do hospital, you can do community. There's a lot of variety, and I think that you would really enjoy it, and you can chop and change. So he had recommended that I go down that pathway.
I don't think I thought that far ahead. I went to visit. I remember an open day visit with King's. And the first thing they took us through were the labs, and the smell of the labs just got me. And I thought, oh, yes, that's where I'm going to be.
That's amazing, though. You knew from very early on, and that's actually quite a unique sort of experience, because a lot of pharmacy students now, or even, 10, 15 years ago, a lot of people who were trying to get into medicine were unfortunate or knew they'd have to kind of wait another year to try again because it was so competitive, and then sort of fell into pharmacy and then discovered their path throughout kind of university. So it's good you had some idea from the beginning.
Yes.
And you're still with us today.
I am.
Yeah. So what was it like for you in university in terms of your passions and where you could see yourself? So you obviously liked the lab environment. Were you expecting that you would continue that journey?
Yeah, I thought I was going to finish university and go straight into a PhD. And I actually did that. as in I knew I was going to do my pre-reg because doing the pre-reg will just give you, it just ticks off a completion box. There's no point in doing 3 years and then just let it hang. So I did the pre-reg year. And when I finished, while I was waiting I got offered 3 PhDs and I picked one of them. So while I was waiting for that to happen, I started working as a junior pharmacist. And then when they told me to come and do the PhD, I just dropped everything, handed in my resignation and walked off to do it. And then a week later, the funding fell through. So, and because I had refused to do any other topic except for the one that I wanted, so I just said, no, I'm not picking another one. I'll just go back to working and then wait and see what happens. And that took another 15 to 20 years.
Really? Oh my goodness.
I just refused to do any other topic until I wanted to do protein engineering.
And what is it about protein engineering that you are so interested in to wait that long?
I really liked it. I didn't do protein engineering in the end. So as you know, I just had to waited that long and gave up in the end. It's when I was doing my final year, I did receptor pharmacology and medicinal chemistry, and I absolutely loved those 2 topics. And one of the things I used to do instead of revising for my exams would sit down and try to predict how a protein would fold on a piece of paper and go back to my lecturer and say, what do you think of this? And he used to say, we have computers that do that. You need to focus on revision.
Get the basics.
So in the end, he had a project that was protein engineering. And when he said, here's a project, protein engineering, I said, absolutely yes. So dropped everything to go and do it, but the funding fell through. So,
oh, what a shame.
Yeah, that was depressing. And then I didn't really I just went into clinical pharmacy, and it's, life engulfs you. And in the end, I did a master's afterwards anyway.
So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, if I'm being really honest. I think a lot of pharmacists come into the profession with that kind of thought process. So I love science. I was a bit of a science geek. I could not write to save my life. So something like law was totally out of the question. English was not my strong point. So I was like, let's focus on something with science. And I wanted to be quite hands-on. I'm quite chatty. I like talking to people. So I didn't want to be stuck in a lab. Being a nurse seemed a little bit too gooey for my liking. Like, I didn't want to particularly get as hands-on as a nurse would do. And so my uncle and aunt both were pharmacists for Boots when I was growing up. So I kind of knew a little bit about what they did. And my aunt was one of the kind of first prescribers in asthma when I was kind of growing up. So I knew a little bit, but they didn't really live close enough for me to ever do work experience with them. But it seemed really interesting. So I applied to university to do Eastern philosophy and Japanese.
Ooh.
Or pharmacy. So writing a personal statement was really, really challenging, trying to get both of those in. Which meant I got accepted for some pharmacy schools and actually a couple of places for Eastern philosophy. But yeah, it got turned down, quite rightly so, looking back, by 2 institutions that felt that maybe I lacked focus in where I wanted to go with my life, which, was fair.
Fair enough. And I understand you went to Bradford and did the sandwich course.
Yes.
What was your reason for choosing that?
So I got accepted at Bradford and Brighton. So I just kind of weighing up my options. And I really liked the idea of being able to go away, earn some money, because 4 years seemed like a really long time, especially back then when I was kind of 18. And, that was nearly the whole of my secondary education going again. So it was kind of close enough to home that I could see my family and things, but not so close that they drop in on me. And I think when we went down to Brighton, the train journey was just horrific, which is what put me off. And everybody seemed really sporty and not like me. So ended up in Bradford and loved it. Absolutely loved it.
That's a good point. Trouble is, it was a very, very long time ago, and trying to remember back that far is intriguing. But there was something about, I liked science, and I liked law, and I liked people. And when I was doing one of those 6th form, what sort of career should you have, pharmacy popped up. So I didn't know any pharmacists, didn't know anybody in the in the career or anything. And I thought, have a look at that. And here I am. It was one of those. I thought, well, that looks pretty good. And so I went in and did it as my degree. I did spend a lot of my degree in the army. I was in the officer training corps, and so it was a bit strange, and probably I might have not got the balance quite right between how much time I spent with the army and how much time I spent studying. But I did come out with my pharmacy degree, and at one point I was going to join the forces as a pharmacist.
Oh, amazing!
But at the time there were only 7 pharmacists in the whole of the forces, and therefore the prospects weren't huge. So then I looked at actually joining and becoming a Royal Engineer in the forces. But eventually I thought, no, I'll give this pharmacy thing a go. And so I left Nottingham, having had the best 3 years of my life, possibly. And I came down to London to see where I could come and do my pre-reg. And here I am.
Why was it the best 3 years of your life?
I lived life to the full at university. I did work. I was there for most lectures. There are a few lines up through my notes as I fell asleep during some of them, and the pen just carried on up the page as I dozed off. But I was there for most of the lectures. Work hard and play hard, I think is the...
I was literally just going to say that. I was the same. I did 2 degrees, but in my first degree, when I did biology and chemistry, when I was living in America, it was a very work hard, play hard situation. But then when I moved back to the UK and did pharmacy, I became like really serious about, sticking to studying, attending everything, being on time, really organized, and on top of my game, because I just felt like I got it all out my system. So when you were at university, what kind of pathway did you think that you would go down in terms of pharmacy?
I actually didn't know, and so it seemed to fit with aspects of what I was, but I hadn't really thought about what the career was at the end of it. And it just so happened that I actually went out to Africa straight after my degree, on a thing called Operation Raleigh, sort of a voluntary thing, doing all sorts of things with rhino rescue and bits and pieces. And therefore, I wasn't too sure how to do my pre-reg, because most people started their pre-reg sort of after the summer. And I was in Africa until after Christmas. And so I thought, well, who is going to give me a pre-reg in the middle of the year? And I actually applied to Community, and I couldn't get one at the time. And so I tried a couple of hospitals, and one said, well, we can't start it straight away, but we'll be happy if you come as a sort of an additional VAC student to see through one bit. And I started my pre-reg a year late. And in some ways, that was the beginning of everything, because I was the pre-reg who'd had the most experience when I started. I'd already been working there. And I started at a place called St. Stephen's Hospital, which doesn't exist anymore. It's where Chelsea and Westminster now stands. And I was in there with part of the time with a building hat on, because they were knocking it down literally soon after I started. But we went to Westminster from there, and there was a place called Westminster Children's Hospital. And because I'd been around the longest out of the pre-regs, I was the first one to get sent over there. And my career has been paediatrics literally ever since. And so I was Westminster Children's Hospital, did a bit of care of the elderly and a bit of mental health, but on the whole, I stuck with paediatrics. And the first time a permanent post came up at Westminster Children's, I went for it and I got it. And I've literally been doing paediatric pharmacy ever since that point in time.